Okay, so let's knock some stuff out of the park here first to kind of get everybody situated. So last week I couldn't make it because I was dealing with some individuals that needed some help immediately, and I was also in the midst of traveling. So, which is why we have me, Doug, and Raul kind of doing this because today Raul and Doug are on the road, but they're going to try to log. They're going to try to get to a Starbucks, I think, to log on. But we're constantly on the move. We're constantly moving. So I couldn't be here for last week's show, and they're going to be trying to come on here a little bit. Hopefully, if they get a connection. If not, that's why we have it set up this way so that we can kind of do what we got to do, and we don't miss a Wednesday. So that's good to go. So with that, again, apologies for last week, but again, that's what we do. We travel and kind of spread the word, and almost feel like a I don't want to say salesman, but the we have the calendar of a traveling salesman. That's what it feels like because I had set up a meeting, and Egan, we'll get to you here and
Hmm.
everything, but like I don't know if you deal with this, but like I travel so much that I have my calendar where wherever I go, my computer picks up the dates or the times that I'm in. And so I had a meeting on my calendar. I had four meetings on my calendar for the same time on the same day, but they were all at different times because
Time zones.
one was central, one was
Yeah.
mountain, one was. And I was like, oh shit, I know it. And I just had to update my calendar, so it was all like
Um,
that. So with that, Egan, thanks so much for coming on. I
Thank
know the guys and everybody linked up earlier in the last week or so, and we want to bring perspectives from all angles: fire, PD, medic, family, dispatch, all that good stuff. In the space of what it really is. If you want to know what trauma is or how to identify certain things, you can read a text or you can watch a video or what all that good stuff. But it comes, I think, for me, I'm a little bit more of a tactile learner. I need to see it in real life, what it actually looks like, because almost under the same kind of concept of when you go through a fire academy or police academy or you go be certified as a medic or whatever it is, they're like, all right, you learned all this stuff, you're never going to use it, or you get all that like, well, this is the real deal.
mhm.
Some of it's somewhat true, a little bit, some of it's a little bit exaggerated, but there's a difference in how we all experience and evolve, and again, evolve from trauma, good, bad, or otherwise, right? And I think that's what we try to bring here. And I know you have an amazing story that's personal. So again, thanks for opening up and sharing with us and the folks that are going to be on here.
Absolutely.
So just introduce yourself, get a little background. Who's Egan and where
Sure.
did you come from?
Oh, no, just first off, thanks so much for having me on here. And it's great to go live with you here and on this platform. So it's amazing. So thanks for having me. So, yeah, my name is Egan De Los Cobos. I am 44 years old currently. I have a wife. I have three kids. Some of them, hopefully, you won't hear them in the background. They just got back from school and they're going to be heading out to dance class. So I got a 15-year-old son. And then two little girls that are 7 and 5. So I'm busy on the home front with the family. I'm also a full-time firefighter paramedic. I work in central coast of California or Santa Barbara County, and I've been a firefighter paramedic for my agency for a little over 18 years. And I've been in EMS, fire, that kind of realm since I was 18, so a little over 25 plus, 26 years actually. So quite a while. I started really young. So like I throughout and then on the other side of it, we'll kind of get into that too, is like I'm also a health coach, but I've got into that because of my own kind of story, which we can get into at some point, sure, but that's a little bit. So that's kind of what I do. And that's what I do also for After Action, is doing group health coaching sessions for first responders and patient treatment. So I've been able to be part of that for the last year and a half too. And also I always say I like all things health on and off duty. So it's just something that I like, and have a passion for, even more so in regards to my own story. But I enjoy it. So I not only do I do this and obviously do my own health journey that I've gone through, but I do this on duty as well. So I'm also the peer support coordinator for my agency, as well as actually developing a wellness program that I'm really close to getting fully adopted here. So, which is great. So I do all those things on duty, off duty. So I just like all this stuff and I just have a passion for it because I like it. It's just another form of us as first responders. We got into this business of helping and wanting to be that person. And this is just another avenue to help others and those closest to us too. So that's kind of what I'm kind of all about. And so I don't have a ton of free time, but when I do, I like to surf, take care of myself, and go for runs, walks, and hang out with my kids. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of where I'm at in my life right now.
So yeah, so again, and fortunately I'm on, and I wasn't traveling because I was a firefighter,
Hmm.
as well. So I have my background's in that too. Mine's all on the East Coast, so it's like being a fireman and a medic in California, but with shittier language and horrible weather.
It's a good way to put it.
The smells are the same, the people are the same, but it's just the environment. Um, so I gotta tell you, and I'm curious to hear your take on it because we have similar paths in that I created a program on the East Coast where I was working but I didn't start it initially. Like my agency didn't have anything, and it was over the years towards the latter part of my career where the wheels fell off for me that I was like, I need something, but kind of flip that into I need something. Let's see what we can do for the agency. And I hear this a lot because we again going around the country, we don't have a peer program or we don't have any kind of support or we don't have anything. I think what they mean to say is we don't have something formal that's
Correct.
recognized within the agency. Because I can tell you, um, there was I was first starting out in my career in narcotics and the police department, and young detective, uh, eager to hit the ground running, and I sought out some of the most senior. I don't want to say senior because I don't equate time to experience because there's some guys and girls that have been working for decades who don't know shit. But I kind of gravitated towards those folks that could provide me guidance and essentially a mentor. And one of the guys that I met, I'll use his first name. His name was Steve. Um, he was the guy that if somebody in your family was robbed, you'd want him handling your case. He was an old school gumshoe, like hardcore East Coast cop detective, violent crimes detective. And I was working a bunch of different things, and I would always bounce stuff off him. And I had a conversation with Steve um, about a case that I was working where a guy and this is the reality of the work that we do. A guy who was running a tattoo shop out of his house was bringing in kids under the age of 14 and then assaulting them using
Hmm.
lidocaine or topical anesthetics and stuff like that. For again, I'm not going to get too far down the details with it. And I remember having a conversation with Steve, and I'm like, um, I'm befriending this guy for the purposes of locking him up. That's all I'm doing, and finding out what he's doing, how deep it goes, and who all this stuff. And I remember having a conversation with him, going, "This is really fucking me up. I don't like this. I want to just put everything aside and just beat the shit out of him." Like that, I was going through that, and he sat down. And he goes, "Listen, you're going to feel that, but you're a professional. What's your purpose?" Well, my purpose is to get this asshole off the street. My purpose is to make the next 20 something plus years of his life miserable in some joint somewhere. That's my goal. He goes, "All right, that's what you want to get to. Work the case. The problem you're going to run into is that you're absorbing all this bad energy from this kid and all the stuff that's going on. Stay focused and understand that the outcome, you're doing some ugly stuff to get to the right outcome." Um, Fast forward a few years later, Steve killed himself.
Hmm.
And I remember like, and again, all these kind of things happen in the same kind of realm. And I'm curious to see on your side of it. that was peer support in a way for me because I was struggling with, okay, and there's degrees of struggling. I wasn't like I can't do my job. I was just, this was bothering me, and this is where I think, and I think you probably see it too, that folks don't necessarily seek out help for the little things. I would have never sought out any kind of professional help for a single case like that. That's ridiculous. But that's just a case that was bothering me at that time. There was 4 or 5 different other things, or handling a kid that ODs, or co-sleeping where mom rolls over on the baby or dad rolls over on the baby and they die. Those situations by themselves are pretty tragic, but
Hmm.
not moving me to the point where I'm like, I need to get help. When honestly, that's probably the best time to unburden yourself of that and kind of share that story. So I think I was doing that with Steve initially, right?
Hmm.
And I think I was doing it. I was like piecemealing it. Does that make sense to you? Are you seeing?
Totally. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. It's kind of not thinking like, oh, this isn't severe enough, but maybe that's like
Yeah,
your signal. And like, I think that's a very good point too, because I mean, our capacity to deal with stress and trauma, like the analogy of a garden hose versus a fire hose kind of thing, right? You're
yeah,
drinking out. That's what we are doing. So I look at it, especially when I'm doing pure stuff, is if it's sticking out to you, then that's pretty significant, right? Because we're already in a capacity where we're seeing stuff all the time. So if it's enough to be in that, then there's probably 10 other things that are lodged in your brain that you're not even cluing into the fact too. So usually that's kind of the one that starts tipping, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff. And just like therapists always like to refer about like called pulling that thread, is so maybe that's that little one that's kind of poking out that thread, right? But once you start pulling on that, all kinds of other stuff could be falling out on the wayside that you didn't even realize that too.
yeah. It was almost like I think that event was standing on 13,000 other events.
Yep.
That's what it feels, right? And so the one big difference is, especially that I saw, and again, there's subtle differences between, and I worked as a medic out of a hospital, so there wasn't a fire element to it. It was a standalone kind of medic, as opposed to working in a firehouse where there's a there's a sense of communal kind of interaction, right? So the medic, you're really kind of tied up with your partners and maybe some of the folks that you're doing shift work with that you're like, you go to a multiple aid call where you and another ambulance or bus or whatever are going to kind of show up. And then afterwards, if you're either at the hospital, that's the majority of the time that we're kind of interacting. We're at the hospital, and to be quite honest, and we'll just keep this between us and the internet. We're trying to steal as much shit we can from the hospital and the other buses.
That never
So
happens.
I will try to take as much shit from the hospital to restock stuff because the city's always making a ton of money to supply stuff, right? So we have that venue, and it's really hard to kind of, with the occasional like bad call, whether it be like an ejection or a high mechanism injury or something like that, where we'll be typing up notes or like washing down the bus, making sure, kind of decon everything and kind of talking about it so that the back of the ambulance or the report room for the hospital um, becomes almost like a little counseling kind of session. And then let's
Mhm.
shift over to the fire side of the house where, and this comes in stages depending on what shift you're working and stuff like that and the patterns that we kind of set up where that kitchen table, the kitchen table is great. I don't take anything from it, but there's
Mhm.
a lot of people eating at the kitchen table. So the dialogue is there, but not as intense as the kitchen where everybody's talking because we're not eating yet, right?
Mhm.
Those are the times where we kind of interact, guarded, because if you're the new guy, there's a hierarchy thing. Then you're a new
Sure.
guy, you want to be, or a new guy or girl, you don't want to be the person like with all the drama, right? So you just kind of soak it up, sit in it.
Yeah.
A lot
Mhm.
of a lot of jabs, jibs, and jabs that are kind of joking with each other.
Mhm.
Then you move over to like the PD side or the police side, and you'll have maybe we call it the car 69, where the cars pull up the aside so you can talk to
Okay.
the,
Mhm.
and we have that, or we'll meet off site somewhere, and those become these little things that we kind of can talk. But it's not, it doesn't, to me, while cathartic and helpful and
Mhm.
it's formal, right? These are informal kind of situations. That's our opportunity to kind of vent or kind of test to see if what we're experiencing kind of, I think I was always looking for, if I brought something up, somebody
Mhm.
Oh, I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, validation. Yeah.
You're crazy. Why are you sweating that? Like kind of stuff like that.
Hmm.
But in the firehouse, and we'll kind of speak to that aspect here. I found it interesting that we'll talk about things to a point, and then it's just kind of hanging out there, and nobody really, at times, depending on your crew, because it shifts, wants to like dig deeper, because it's like he's like, oh, that doesn't bother me, or I get it, that's tough, but listen, we got to keep this facade up. Did you see that kind of going through in your career? Did it start changing?
Yes.
Or how was that?
I literally just had this. I have a unique situation because my captain is also one of my peer supporters too. So we just literally had this discussion about just from our own microcosm of our agency of just literally in the last, I'd say, 12 to 24 months of just this little nudges of change and that being more accepted, like literally. So, and like I said, been in the fire service for 26 years and that never happened. But that's only in certain settings, certain people too, right? You still have those people. I had this that you brought up this point about like how something comes and then, oh, let's just shove that around and we'll go do something else. Like that literally just happened. I had another person who was new to his role, and a different person, not one of my peers. And I'm used to working with other guys or being a little more open maybe than others are. And I'm like, oh, I forgot what it was. It was something at home, like, I don't know if it was a sick kid or something like that. Like I just was bringing it off the top of my chest, and the guy like literally just didn't say anything. And then he's like, "Well, I gotta go." Then he just leaves. I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, yeah, like I'm like, so like literally what you're talking about, like that was all the time. Like Pete guys would just put on this front, and then and that still kind of happens too. Like the whole diffusing debriefing, like a critical incident happens, we call the station, call the captain or whatever, and say, "Hey, we're checking on everybody. What are they going to say? I'm fine, right?" And that's a lot of the times, but now it's starting to change a little bit. Depending on the person, depending on the crews, you're always going to have those people who are the naysayers until they have no choice but to stare that in the face, which happening a lot more, I've noticed too. But that culture, like you're saying, that's been deep rooted. I think law enforcement's done a way better job than us of adopting peer support and all those things historically, right? We're kind of late to the game, fire EMS and all this stuff too. So we're trying to get caught up with all that stuff, and it's slowly changing. But you're always going to have those kind of naysayers too. But it's definitely just we're starting to see that change of decades of yeah. We don't talk about anything. If you can't deal with it, go get a different job. I heard that conversation told to lots of rookies and other things like that was the standard hustle with it all. And like I think I probably had the same thing going throughout my career of like, oh man, is this for me? Like I don't know. Like I think I'm okay with it, and I guess you just just keep going on. That's what it's all about until it's not.
So I again, if you'd have told me at the beginning of my career, even halfway through my career, that I'd be in this mental health kind of space or wellness space or whatever, I'd have told you you're out of your mind. I'm going to retire. I don't want, first of all, I don't want to get promoted. I want to retire as a narcotics detective. That's all I wanted to do. I was having a blast. If not that, then maybe violent crimes, working homicides and stuff like that. And I got a chance to do that, and it was phenomenal. But along the way, multiple shootings that I was involved in. And then the last one that kind of just kind of threw me for a loop in my mind at that time, there was a pivotal moment, but it was a series of things that happened throughout my various careers in the military, in the fire side of the house, the medic side of the house, and all that good stuff, right? And then it got to a point where the wheels fell off. This is for me. So the wheels fall off, and I don't know what to do. So the only thing I do is I drink, party, isolate, joke about everything until those things stopped working. And then it just became full-time drink, full-time isolate, and again, life happens while that's going on. So divorce, getting in trouble at work, whether it be administratively or through an investigation. And if you work in the work, in narcotics or violent crimes, people are going to complain on you. You're going that I'm not it's not lost on me, and it doesn't bother me. But made this effort to go, okay. And again, when it got dark, suicide attempts started happening. And then I got to a point where I said, okay, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I just am. I want to learn what's going on with me. So I, instead of like, hey, maybe let's go out and get some help, I said, no, I'm going to kind of absorb all this knowledge. So once I got a little bit of knowledge, I started seeking out help, and the whole, going to treatment or going to a doctor or a clinician, and worked on it. And then like, you know what? I'm going to shift all my education to psychology, do all this other stuff, and kind of learn and learn. And this is the real side of it, not to help anybody. I could have given a shit about anybody else. I wanted to know. And that's just the way I'm made up. I go 1,000
Mhm.
miles an hour in one direction because that's what I'm hyper focused on, which
I
is
can
good.
I can relate.
It's good in investigations for our work,
For
but anyway, so I started doing that, and by default started working on people. So it's almost like a, an origin story of, this is who I was before. I would have never thought to do this. And if you told me years ago, after like my second or third shooting, hey, you need to talk about, I told you, kiss my ass. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm not
Mhm.
that guy, right? Now I'm that guy. But it happened over a period of time. Where did you come in? What's like your origin story to kind of get you? Because mine was multifaceted. Mine was mental health primarily, then substance issues, and then it became physical health for me.
Mm.
In that, again, for me, not this is how it happens, was in that order. So
Mhm.
get the mental health right first to figure out why I'm doing what I'm doing, self harm or substance or whatever it is.
Mhm.
Then once I kind of get a grip on that, focus on, all right, let's focus on the substance issues. And then it was like, okay, I got that kind of knocked down to a manageable roar. I'm not in the shape that I need to be. Let's start working on that. And that was the progression, but it was an origin for me. It took something, multiple things bad happening. What's yours? If that, does that
Yeah,
make sense? Does that kind of,
totally. Mine's a line in the sand that happened right away. So, and then like it's almost like a when you say origin story, I'm like, oh, that hits because that's kind of been, I guess, how I've lived before and after my accident. So like so mine was a clear line in the sand of the trajectory of where I'm at today. So I mentioned the fact that I started in the fire service at young, 18 years old. And like kind of like we just mentioned, right? The whole adage of suck it up, buttercup, all these things, bad things are going to happen. And so, yeah, brought up in that culture. And then I always, when I do presentations too, especially with After Action, I always show my graduation day photo as 19 years old, Hancock Academy. Well, it's a college academy. And when I teach to the recruits, I say, like I said, you guys are going to have this picture. I already have this picture. So this was me, 19 years old, excited about all the stuff I just learned. I underwent hundreds of hours of training, learning how to do rescue, EMS, you name it, all these cool things, right, to take care of the public. What tools did I get to learn how to take care of myself? Nothing, right? And so that was then. And now we're slowly moving. But anyways, I digress. So throughout my entire early career, I was brought up all these thousands of hours of training, learning how to take care of everyone else around me, not knowing what PTSD was. I heard about it, the military, maybe. I had no correlation to the first responder world. And I didn't know. And then I always was kind of the person who was interested in health. I tried to work out. I tried to eat good, do all those things. Like I was always interested in trying to be healthy. And then when I was 33, so October 3rd, 2013, you're talking about an origin story. So October 3rd, 2013, um, that's when my life changed. So my son, he was 3 years old at the time. We were sitting in it's a coffee shop. There's a patio in front of this grocery store and has a coffee shop out front. So it's a little patio and the parking lot kind of butts up to that. And there's a gazebo. So this gazebo, we'd sit inside of it. It was kind of cool, especially in the summertime. And I'd get a coffee, my son get his croissant, and we sat in this gazebo and we talk about our day. So the way this coffee shop set up, there's a highway that kind of parallels the grocery store, and then you come inside, and the handicap parking spot is directly in line with this gazebo. On this day, an elderly driver came in. high rate of speed. We've been to these calls. She wanted to hit the brake and hit the accelerator and drove right through us. And so my son went one way, I went the other. And when I came to, I couldn't find him. And so I'm moving tables, chairs, debris, all kinds of stuff everywhere. And I eventually find him not moving, partially under the car. So as I'm going down to pick him up, I'm thinking that's it. He's dead. And I pick him up, but he starts crying right away. So best cry I've ever heard. And I remember two distinct emotions of feeling in that moment. I was holding my son. One, I was super grateful that he's alive, but I had two distinct feelings after that. One was the driver was getting out of her car and I wanted to punch her in the face. And then the other one was, I think my legs are broken, but I can't really evaluate that. I just need to walk and get away from this. So I got away from it, sat down. My legs were not broken. They carried me over, even though they were in excruciating pain. And then, long story short, I held my son the entire way, all the way down to the trauma center for an hour. The ER doctor had to pull him out of my hands. Long story short, physically fine. Bumps, bruises, scratches. That's it. There's no good reason. I thought I was glanced by the car. Nope, it square hit us through all the way through, and I don't know. So blessing that we physically did not get hurt from that accident. So I wrote it off as that's it. We're good. Man, that was a near-death experience. We are good. My son's good. Man, everything's kosher. So I just leaned into gratitude and I thought that was good enough. So about, and then in regards real quick about therapy. So I thought I knew this accident was significant and I was worried about my son. So I booked an appointment for a therapist, went through my insurance, and he evaluated my son and said he was fine from what he could see. And, but he's worried about me. And I'm like, well, I'm good. And so he's like, well, I wanted you to do something for me. And he said this in a backhanded way, kind of as I'm going out the door. He said, I want you to write a letter to your son as if he had died. And it took me back. And that was my first experience with therapy. I was driving home and I'm like, fuck that guy, dude. That's bullshit. I'm not gonna do that. That is, why would I want to dwell on that? That therapy's done. I'm over that stuff. They don't know what they're talking about. So I wrote it off. But lo and behold, weeks after that accident, I started having physical health symptoms. So that was kind of the first inclination that something was going wrong. But I thought, so my middle toes on both my feet had swelled up the size of my big toes. And that was the first sign of my autoimmune disease, psoriatic arthritis. But again, none of this got put together for years to come. And so, but I'm like, okay, well, maybe they broke in the accident, got evaluated, got x-rays. No, nothing was broken. It was just inflammation. But that was the start of the cascade of physical health issues. And then that cascaded into mental health issues. So I started having back pain, hip pain. I literally felt like I was a 90-year-old man in a 33-year-old's body. I couldn't walk. I couldn't pick up my child some days. I was breaking down. I started having psoriasis, which is kind of like having poison oak. It's really itchy, red, inflamed, flaky skin all over wherever it is. And it feels like your skin's on fire. So that started happening. So I'm seeing dermatologist, orthopedist, my general practitioner, x-rays. I went to UCLA twice. They wanted to cut my hip open, grind down my femur head, put it back together, and then come back in a few years for a hip replacement. Those were the answers I was getting. In all these doctors, I would say, hey, on October 2nd, 2013, my health was fine. And then ever since my accident on October 3rd, my health has been in decline. Is it related to this accident? I said I wasn't hurt, and all of them told me no. I'm like, well, it doesn't feel right to me. There's a line in the sand that my health has gone downhill. So, but that was the answers I was getting. And so I started having all these physical health symptoms. And then on top of that, mental health symptoms. Looking back, again, I'm not putting any of this together. I knew something in my gut was wrong, but I didn't, or in like in the, just a context of it. I just knew something was wrong. But I couldn't put my finger on it except for that accident. So I started having anxiety, trouble sleeping at night. I thought it was normal, especially just starting in the fire service at 18 all the way till now. That 4 hours of sleep was totally cool. You're good there. So I'd like go to bed at 10 o'clock. I'd, just think about things for the day, whatever, my kid, etc. Fall asleep about 2, wake up at 6 a.m. and go do it again. I thought that was normal. Apparently that's not. I'd also have to take NyQuil to go to bed, just even to get some sleep. I was finding myself doing that, not necessarily addiction, just more for sleep. Like that's it. So here and there, I would have to do that. Like it was just to get rid of that. And so I was having all these things kind of compounding, and then everything kind of it came to a head. So my physical health declining, all this stuff's going on. And then my son, he was about 5 years old now. And it was my girlfriend at the time. We were making dinner. My son was on a bar stool, I don't know, 3, 4 feet high, and he fell off of it. It's not a big deal. Like kids fall. But when he fell off of that bar stool, it was like he was dying in front of me. I rushed over to him. I grabbed him up and I squeezed him. I probably couldn't breathe, poor kid. And I start crying inconsolably. My girlfriend's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like, "I have no idea, but I know my reaction was way over the top. I know that it's unreasonable, but I can't control it. I don't know what's going on." So I'm like, "I got to do something about this." That's when I went back and I'm like, therapy, I think, is something I need. So finally found a trauma trained therapist. We talked briefly, right, about culture and all that stuff. I didn't have peer support. We didn't have anything. Nobody talked about anything. I didn't tell my captain I couldn't walk some days. I couldn't tell my captain I wasn't getting sleep at night. I wasn't telling my captain I was taking NyQuil to sleep at night, even on duty sometimes, just to get some rest. So like all these things were scary, right, of your job or what everything looks like. But I knew I had to change. So I found a good therapist. I paid cash. I burned the receipt. I didn't want anyone to know, and I was diagnosed with PTSD. And like I said before, I thought that was simply for military veterans, people who have been to war, some really bad stuff. I had no idea that that could affect us. And that's what I said to my therapist. And she's like, "No, no, no, like trauma doesn't really work that way." And she explained a little bit how the brain works. And she's like, "You're a first responder. You've seen a lot of bad shit along the way, and that doesn't help." I'm like, "Okay." So for the first time when I walked out of that office, the first time in, 3 years, I had an answer and a direction to go. And I had an answer to that feeling that I had inside me that something happened on that day, and I can start putting the pieces back together. So I underwent EMDR. So I moved desensitization and reprocessing, and it worked fantastic for me. And that was kind of the pivotal point for me to start putting pieces together of kind of where I can go from there. And just like you're talking about being a medic and everything, and how you doubled down on what you could do for yourself, that's what I did. Is I just tore into what connection is there to stress or a significant incident in physical health, and lo and behold, there's a whole bunch of science, and there's emerging science now that's coming about it, and that's amazing. And that's what I felt inside my body. But I would go to doctors and say, "Hey, this is going on. Is it related?" And they all told me no. And I actually just had this conversation with my now primary doctor, who's a DO, also. And I told her, I'm like, "Hey, I would say like I'm like all the stuff I had was stress related in the past." She's like, "Oh yeah, totally." I'm like, "You're the first doctor who's ever told me that in 13 years." She's like, "Really?" I'm like,
Most
"Yes."
doctors don't get that training.
Yeah, I know.
By
Yeah.
the way, I want to, just for context purposes,
Mhm.
all this stuff is going on. You're still working. You're
Yes.
still doing and that's what I think. And I'm curious to see what your ideas on this are. But
Mhm.
you're functioning. I call it like being like working wounded, but you're functioning. And I would say this, and this is where I think people don't have an understanding. And Doug, myself, and Roland, hey guys,
Mhm.
are very familiar with this. We operate at peak performance in chaos, right?
Mhm.
The world is collapsing. And in my brain and in our brains, we're like, I can still do this, so I'm good.
Yeah. It's a good
But
way
and I'm
to
not. I'm
justify
basically
it.
on fire, right?
Mhm.
With everything falling off, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm good," and kind of going. So pick it up from there with, and I want people to understand, you didn't take a break to address this shit. You were actively working and, I don't know, having a life, taking care of your family, your kids, and doing all the shit you need to do.
Mhm.
What does that look like in the context? So here you are, you're finding out EMDR, which is great. I've had it done multiple times. I call it trauma exorcisms.
Oh,
It's
I
great.
like that. Yeah.
I wish I came up with it. I heard it when somebody said it. I was like, I'm stealing that shit.
That's a great one.
It's like the trauma exorcism. That's all it is. It's hard to
Mhm.
explain, but once people kind of go through it, it's important, right?
Mhm.
So you're getting all this stuff kind of together. You're figuring it out. This is still you putting you together and trying to figure all this stuff out. What's going on at that moment once you start? And let me ask you this: the greatest and worst day of my life was when I was explained to the what the problem was, the PTSD, depression, anxiety, all that stuff. I was like, great, it has a name.
Hmm.
Fuck, I have these things. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yes.
you go through that at all?
That's no, you hit the nail on the head. That was literally when I walked out of that office was the first answer and first glimmer of hope that I ever had in those years. Like it was just dark. And I always, when I talk about this stuff too, I always say like I was never quote unquote like suicidal. But I knew what that dark road looked like to not want to be in pain anymore on lots of levels. And so I got a glimmer into maybe what I would think that would look like. It was dark, but and so when you're talking about that moment, that was that moment when I walked out. I'm like, holy shit, I have an answer, and I'm like and then obviously you start looking. I'm like, whoa, this does make sense of what I'm feeling in my gut, and at least and she was able to say, hey, this is what it is. And then I look, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, look at that, check that box, check, and then here's the plan. We're gonna do this thing. I'm like, okay, cool. Like at least I have some direction on something too. So yeah, exactly. So I had the line in the sand on my physical mine, like I said, it was more was that physical health that I feel like started first, or at least the symptoms started first. That meant that, and then the mental health I noticed more. Who knows? Like, and that's a whole lot about this, right? The brain and the gut and all that stuff too, is the chicken and the egg and all that stuff. There's a lot of um it's bilateral, so
Yeah,
you don't wrap your head around which one came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Like just make eggs or chicken. So
yeah.
that's how I like to look at it.
So what?
So,
So what happens? So is there come a point in time where, and I don't ever use the word fix because we're never fixed. I think we're just healthier.
mhm.
Point in time where you get comfortable to the degree that you're healthier, and then you start moving towards sharing that with other people.
Okay. Like I said, I doubled down on, I just wanted to get myself back to square one. I have, and throughout, you're talking about that, the painful journey. So, the so just a real quick backstory too of so the accident with my son's from a previous relationship. Anyways, I was interviewed after my accident by a reporter who is now my wife with we have kids. So it's so I always tell her how to get hit by a freaking car to meet her. So just
Nice.
a little lining there too on all that stuff. So I had that accident, right? And then so I started a new relationship. I started then physical health issues. So she knew me at my darkest, which is kind of nice. So it's like, oh, if I can get better from here, I think you'll stay with me. So she met me at my darkest and through all that stuff. So that was kind of good, right? I think, I don't know. I look at that as a silver lining too, is like she was already in the bad times and things have gotten better over time. So I think we can navigate that. So maybe that makes our relationship a little stronger. And so what you're talking about, all those things. So I was juggling, right? Yeah, I never stopped working. Did I have to call in sick some days? Yes, I did have to, but I was never off a long-term injury. Should I have not been at work? Yes, many days. Like a lot of us probably have felt that way. Like there's no way I'm functioning. And like you said, like most people go into work and they're at 70%, they're down to 50, they're ready, done for the day. We're comfortable operating at 50% and feeling we're golden. Even 10%. Yeah. Oh yeah. The overtime shift, you got it. I'm there. Like we'll push through and we'll keep pushing through. And so that was me. I was, if I had to say, like I was probably running at 10% for years.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Like just trying to survive that survival mode on lots of levels. Developing trying to develop a relationship, engagement, marriage, all that stuff, physical health, mental health, and then raising my son, and then now, and then things started. I was able to. It was still like I told you the NyQuil. I was taking NyQuil to sleep on my wedding day. That's how bad my health was even on my wedding day. And then just slowly changing over time, and learning in what that stress reaction was, immune health, and all that stuff. And that's the stuff I started leaning into as a paramedic. I wanted to know, learning about the autonomic nervous system. We learned that in paramedic school, right? The sympathetic, parasympathetic. I'm like, oh, that's my language. So in understanding that and then how that correlates to our health, and the ways to optimize that. And so that's what I was trying to look for. I didn't want to go down the path, not to say medications or drugs are bad. I've worked in Western medicine for 26 years. There's a time and a place for it, but the choices for me with an autoimmune disease are really grim when it comes to the drugs. And I wasn't at that point where I needed to consider that. And so I wanted to find what can I do to support my body naturally. So that's what I lean into. And a lot of it comes down to the stuff that we know we should be doing, but it's implementing those things. And I think of it like I had a really huge motivating factor underlying with my condition, right? So with psoriatic arthritis, same with like rheumatoid, you're talking about if you want to scare the shit out of yourself, just Google that and do a Google image search, and that'll scare you straight on what the direction of some of those diseases will be, right?
Yeah.
We're talking crippled and all this stuff. So I had a very a lot of motivating things for me to want to try to correct this kind of thing. So that's what
At
I
least mitigate it so you're not going to the extreme to the bad ends of those diagnoses, whether it be the rheumatoid or the
exactly, yeah, and in the progression of that too. So like that was so I had a lot of motivating factors, kids, and then in just my own um wherewithal too of wanting to do something because I'm almost thankful that I didn't get diagnosed because so that's another thing. So I was going to these doctors and I was getting misdiagnosed as well too. So I was seborrheic dermatitis, general inflammation of the skin, not psoriasis. And even though my I have a genetic history of autoimmune and psoriatic arthritis too, like which is one of the three components you get. And I tell doctors and no one would diagnose me. That's a whole nother thing. And then, so I was getting, and then I would get like diagnosed with just osteoarthritis. So that's just general. I'm like, so I was getting all these things, but I'm also thankful I had all those misdiagnoses because if the first doctor said, "Oh, here it is, and this is the drug for you," I probably would have said yes.
yeah.
That's probably what I would have done at that point in time, especially when I was in so much pain. So, but it just went on for so long that just lacked trust in what this path that I was going on, and felt something different in my gut. And I always tell when I coaching clients too is finding the right doctor and all that stuff is great, and that's part of any kind of treatment plan with anything. But remember, at the end of the day, you are ultimately in control of your own health, and you make that decision, not anyone else. So you do what you feels right and best for you.
So I'm curious because so Doug, Raul, and myself, we talk about this. We've yet to encounter a first responder or veteran with one problem at
Mhm.
the one time, right? And so there's all these different things. Like Doug's body in and of itself is a miracle that he's even walking upright. Raul carrying the stress of 20 plus years on the job. He started the job at 6'10". Now he's 4'9". It's just physically kind of taking its toll and demanding. Uh, how do you navigate like so this is what I see a lot and you do a lot of coaching and stuff like this.
Mhm.
It could be very overwhelming to have 15,000 things going on. By the way, we're not even counting the work issues that are coming up or just the dynamics that are the relationships you have at work in tandem with home or just even shift work or milestones for your children or all these different kind of things are happening at once.
Mhm.
Could it could almost present an experience for the individual that it's helpless. Like okay, so I get sleep. The rest of my life is a shit show, right? Or I've managed to isolate work to get that kind of going well, but now my health is declining or my relationship is going to shit. What what did you what was the process? And again, you don't have to be like super specific on it, but just
Mhm.
what are some of the ideas that you kind of went through in dealing with the barrage of shit that you're just like, okay, I got all this going on. How do I address this? How do I move forward in a healthy way? And how do I do it so that I don't get lost working out just my right arm as opposed to working out my arms, my legs, the core, all that stuff? What is that for you? What did that look like?
Of juggling all kinds of things to move in a certain direction. Is that
Yeah,
kind of what you're asking?
yeah, yeah.
Um, And I just think that's, I don't know, it's how we're wired is just, I didn't feel like I had a choice. I think is I don't know. I think well, I can't ignore the fact that I almost died and my son almost died. And so in that moment, that's what triggered the PTSD, right? Was in that brain, that mental splinter that got lodged in my brain was he was dead. And so that was what was that nagging thing. And so I think, but like consciously, I think I had epiphany of like, holy shit, like how precious life is, and how we see that all the time, right? We see how precious life is, and then when it happens to you, it's even more pronounced. So I think I never felt like I had a choice to not owe it to my family and my kids to get healthier, because I didn't want to. And I think a lot of us, right? We don't want to be that burden on somebody, and so we have a choice in whatever that choice is. And my choice was like, I know I can do this, and I'm going to figure out how to do it. And that was, I didn't feel like I had any other choice. I think that was it. I didn't see any other option, as hard as it was too. So it's, I don't know. I think that I just didn't feel like when I look at it, I don't see any other way out.
So let
Hey
me
guys,
ahead.
first want to thanks for being patient with us. We apologize for being late. We're in the middle of Pennsylvania. I'm not sure exactly where we're at, but just outside of Philly, and we just kind of parked up in a restaurant that we went to didn't have any seating, so we had to come to a second one. That's why we're so late. Apologize for that, but we're in the back corner and we're muting ourselves because there is music in the background sometimes. So just out of respect for you, we don't want to have that playing. But
Mhm.
any case, man, I wanted to ask. I'm not sure if you guys have covered it already, but doing what you do now and giving back and being a coach and educating people, how did that even happen? I mean, you're doing everything you just said. I mean, you're really committed into
Mhm.
this is what I have to do for me and my family and for my health and how you got there. But how did it go even further into saying, you know what, I'm going to pay it forward? How did that even
Mhm.
happen? I'm going to mute ourselves
Raul is
again.
right. Raul, you're actually so on point right
Mhm.
now because we did the
Mhm.
his origin story where he got to get all this.
Mhm.
So, dude, it's almost like I should have texted you, be like, hey, this is where we're at, but you already picked up on it. You already picked up on
You
it.
got ESPN too. Yeah, so no, great. So exactly, just like you mentioned, Chris, I wanted to get all this information. Oh, I'm putting myself together first, because like we all know, like it's hard to help other people if if we're messed up, right? If we're shot, if I'm burned up in a building, like I can't help many people. So obviously, selfishly, we want to do that too. And so I did. I was able to piece myself back together, understanding my stuff, and then another thing came out is just like, well, I fell victim to this. I know I'm not alone. It feels like you're alone but I'm like, I don't, I just think that more people need to know about this. And like, same thing with like with therapy visits and the MDR and how that worked with me and how she told us like the impacts of the job. And I'm like, what the heck? So I just kind of find it, just with people, I just started opening my mouth a little bit about like, hey, like I was struggling. I got diagnosed with this PTSD. I had autoimmune disease, as embarrassing that was about my skin and everything. Guys would ask and stuff. And then I just started talking about it. And it's funny. So you're mentioning about when we operate at 50%. It was obviously some days, like I told you, it was like 10%, 5%. One day I thought I was operating at, man, like at that time, like 40%, like a good freaking day. Like I thought my hip felt good. And one of the engineers is all, hey man, you got a hitch in your giddy up. I'm like, what? And I'm like, man, you should have seen me yesterday. Like it was bad. Like I thought I was covering my tracks good too. And then just started kind of sharing what I was done. I was got into kind of like supplementation and kind of that world towards the end of my journey, and then just started kind of sharing my journey with people like close to me, and then on social media a little bit, and then in my own agency too. So it's an ironic too, is because we a lot of times we think everyone knows something's going on with us, and even though nobody does. So I thought everyone knew because I felt like for years I shared, and I have been. I literally probably been talking about my health and my journey for gosh 7 8 years around people and stuff like that. And then I thought everyone knew, right? And so I did, so like I said, I'm the peer support coordinator for my agency, and I'm like, we haven't done any formal training for our department wide on mental health. So we're doing it. So I did a 4-hour thing, me and another peer, and we did this whole stress first aid. And then I just shared my story because I'm like, it correlates to stress. And I'm wanting to paint this picture of the shit that I missed, of how this stuff impacts, like the statistics we all throw around out there, right? How significant they are on suicide rates and all that, and how the stress can impact so many aspects of our health. And so, in my story is that story. So I wanted to share that. So I rolled, all nearly 300 people through of my agency through the training. And I shit you not, it was probably 30-40% or more of the guys that in our departments sounds 300, but like it's enough that we know everyone by first name. We know a little bit about each other. So it may sound big to some people, but that's pretty small. And so, but nobody knew about a lot of people, I'd say a vast majority knew that I was in that accident. I'd say a vast majority of people had no idea that I got diagnosed with PTSD or had any kind of issues and how severe they were. Like, and I'm like, that goes to show you how good we're hiding it.
That's
And
scary. That's scary.
scary.
You're just one person out of how many in the department? How many other people are wearing that mask?
Totally.
They're-
And it was interesting to see that, and just so you guys are aware, I'm a pretty introverted person. I'm not a very social butterfly. But as I've done this, as I've shared more, as I've gone to other conferences and stuff like that, I felt this need of compelling just to share of what I've gone through, because I wanted to help other people. Like that's been the crux of a lot of this, is I made a lot of mistakes and I don't want other people to make them. No different than any training scenario that we would have at work or something like that. Hey guys, I fucked up on this one. Don't do that. No, don't go that way. Right. So that's like my whole premise on a lot of this stuff. So it just kind of came back, and then feedback. Guys would hit me up. Oh man, so I was dealing with this stuff too. What's that number again? And all those kinds of things. So I'm like, oh, what did you do? Oh, okay. I'll look into it. Like, and then that feels good, right? People are like wanting to get healthier, or like listening to what you have to say, that it impacts them. And so that's kind of how that kind of started growing. And I was just doing this. I was always giving advice and talking to people and like who are dealing with the similar stuff. And then I'm like, I wonder if this is like a thing. I'm like, is it like health coaching a thing? I had no idea. So I just like Googled, right? I'm like, oh, it's an actual thing. I'm like, and I enjoy it, and I feel like it's a good fit. So I just, went through some training on it. I did what's called motivational interviewing. That's the therapists use a lot of that too, right? It just flows naturally of being able to talk. It's just having a conversation. It's no different than we do in the fire station. It's just talking to guys, and a lot of it's not talking. It's just listening to people, right? Like, you guys work in this, like 90% of the time they should be talking. That's the best and most effective therapy, I think, right? Is when someone else is talking, and you're not going to solve anyone's problems. It's allowing them to see, or just kind of formulate those conversations for them to see things on their own. Because just like anything addiction or anything things, if they don't want to address it, it's not going to change. So they have to come up with themselves. So it's simply health coaching is the same way. And that's why motivational interviewing works really well for health. It was started off right with tobacco and alcohol abuse and that kind of model, and it's transitioned into health. Why? Because it's all related. When it comes to addiction, coping mechanisms, they're all kind of in that spectrum. So it just kind of naturally grew into that. And then I formalized it with like trauma informed. I'm already in this world, so I got kind of that thing, and then gut health nutrition specialist, and I got that certification. A lot of that it's stuff that I've already done. I just wanted to formalize it and get more training. And I nerd out on this stuff like crazy. Like I listen to this stuff. I enjoy it. So I don't claim to be anything more than a firefighter that has just gone on a journey and has some tools that maybe might help some people. And if they wanting to like make changes, that's what I'm here for too. Is just offering morally the mistakes that I made, and maybe you can learn from it.
I think when I listen to you and I hear what I'm hearing from you, and I also hear when Doug speaks or when Raul speaks, we're not special. We've been through the same shit that everybody else has been through, but I think you guys have a characteristic that allows you to articulate it in a way that's digestible for the people that you're talking to. Like I see, and I'll bring this back. Like when we were in Rio, with Doug, his message, I think, resonated, and his ability to kind of articulate what he was talking about resonated so much with the audience that it kind of allowed dialogue to begin. Same with Raul, very very powerful kind of story. And I will tell you, Raul and Doug and me and Chris and the other guys that we work with, the story that you think is the most impactful really isn't the most impactful. And I asked this, right? Because I know we're coming up on time, but you mentioned something, and we got into all the stuff that you're talking about, with the health, with PTSD, with all this, with the work, all this other stuff. But there's one thing that kind of stood out to me, and I heard it in what sometimes when Doug speaks, when Raul speaks, when I speak, and it mirrored exactly like when you talk about it. I was like, I thought immediately of the Boston bombing. The Out of all the shit that's going on, it seemed to me what I was hearing was the scariest part of your entire journey was those moments when you didn't know where your kid was. Like, to me, that seemed like, oh, and so I say that, and I, whether right, wrong, or otherwise, sometimes the underlying thing that really is affecting us, that really we need to target, gets overshadowed by all these other things, right? Not that they're less important, but we seem to get better in this one aspect, and we're like, all right, we're killing it, but we're not really addressing the underlying issue. And so if I'm off, I'm off. But it seems like that there's a brief moment in time where it is probably the heaviest thing. And I saw it in, and I know Raul saw it with the Pulse nightclub. That the incident itself horrific, but I think it's the loss of connection to the loved ones or the inability to interact. And I hear it with dispatchers when they get cut off because everybody's on scene, that there's a disconnect, and that is the scariest moment that we experience, that we're kind of our job or our support system or whatever it is, or our loved ones. Am I off or?
Not at all. If I could say 110%, I will, because I go back to that. So my EMDR session. So just to paint a little picture sometimes too with that too. So that talk about not finding my son and picturing that him dead. So I'm glad there's no recording of me. But I still visibly feel it in my gut. Is in that moment when I stood up, I screamed like a 10-year-old girl, I bet. Like, I guarantee you, it was the weirdest. Like, I didn't even recognize the voice that was coming out of my body, but I do remember that and how it felt. And then when you're talking about the EMDR, so a lot of times EMDR is reframing that mental splinter that's lodged in our brain, right? And so as we unpacked what that feeling was, that emptiness. So like I was going through those years of my brain was thinking he was dead that whole time. That's what was nagging at him, that he was missing. That was what was that downstream effect of causing my brain. My brain thinks he's dead, right? Like my subconscious thinks he's dead, but my conscious, he's right here, but it doesn't matter. So until you unpack all that. And so when I did EMDR, and I think it coincides. So it was when it was tapping is what I had it done. I've done it other ways too, but at the time, and maybe that was a correlation. So when I go to that place of him missing, like you're mentioning, my brain constantly just goes like this to this tapping on my shoulder, and it's me picturing my son saying, "I'm here, Dad, I'm here." So that's exactly what EMDR did to reframe that moment, because you hit the nail on the head. That is the one thing that trickled all that down. And I wish I would, like the same thing, right? I wish I understood that then. Maybe I could have lost, or not participated in years of suffering.
I think we need
That's exactly right.
We need to go through those things to really grow from it.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like it's the equivalent of you don't help a chicken get out of the egg, because then it loses the strength it needs to survive once it's out of the egg, kind of thing. So listen,
I like that.
We've come up on time. I want to give everybody an opportunity to kind of round it up. Again, this is just we talked for about an hour or so, and we're not even scratching the surface. And I think that's what I think the takeaway is. That's the important thing to generate this conversation. But let me throw it to Raul and Doug, and I'll say something, and then I'm going to have you wrap up, Egan, with the show. So go ahead, Raul, Doug.
You want me to go? So yeah, just wanted to
Yeah.
just wanted to apologize again. I feel bad and having to mute on and off. So we're trying to be respectful here. But Egan, thanks for coming on. Again, only catching half the show. I'm just thankful that you thought about paying it forward, and saying, you know what, I'm not alone. Because it's hard to do that, right? It's hard to get help, hard to figure out what's wrong with you, let alone say, you know what, now I'm going to try to pay it forward and know that I'm not alone. I mean, that was huge for you to say, because I think everybody in our industry at some point believes that you're alone, so kudos to you. Definitely got to have you back. You're going to be like old furniture when we get done with you. So, all right,
I love
man.
that.
So be ready. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing some freshness to the air. In this industry of mental health, most people talk about the same stuff over and over. But when you brought gut health, like I told you before, I thought that's pretty important. Your mental health doesn't always involve this. It involves the entire body and the entire thing. So it's nice to have what's the word? A little fresher breath there. Is that how you say it?
Yeah,
Fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Fresh perspective.
The Bel Air. Yeah.
Of Bel Air.
I like it.
I do want to mention, and then I'm going to throw it over to you, Egan. I can't get the image out of my head of the two old guys in the Muppets. So if you guys, so I'm just going to put this on. I'm going to have Marky. If we come up with a background that has after action and like that balcony seating when Doug is out,
Marky will make it happen.
Kill it.
We're them two old grumpy guys, man. What the hell? What the? You see that fucking hat he's got in his head?
So Egan, brother, I again, we're just scratching the surface. Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's powerful, it's impactful, and thank you for what you're doing. So I'll leave it to you. What do you got? What you're doing? Where can we get a hold of you if you're speaking somewhere? Throw it out there.
Oh, yeah. So no, thanks again so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This platform's amazing to be able to help people get the message out there too, and being part of After Action for the last year and a half or something has been amazing to be able to work with first responders too. So currently, it's just my website's firstwellnesshealth.com, and then I'm on all the social medias and stuff there too. You can just Google my name and reach out if you have any questions.
Well, that's awesome. Well, folks, thanks again for tuning in. As always, if you or somebody that's struggling, you don't know what to do or who to call, just give us a shout. And Marky, I think, will put on some of the promo stuff that we put out for this, your links to where you're at and what you're doing. And as always, if you got questions or you got an idea for a show that you guys want to listen to or a topic that you're interested in, again, families, first responders, veterans, clinicians, whoever's in this space is more than welcome to come in and chime in and help out. Thanks so much, Egan. You have a good one, and definitely going to be back on. Thanks, Doug, Raul.
Thank you.